All right, we covered Trump's speech. We are going to get to the reaction to Trump's speech because none of that really affects you. It's just fun to go over and kind of get some giggles at funny audio clips. The next headlines we're going to cover here actually may have some sort of effect on you. We've seen movement even during today, like right before the James show started, on what's going on with Trump and tariffs and Canada and Mexico and China. And all this stuff actually does have an effect on your wallet. So we're going to spend a little time with Lance Thrakill, who knows a little bit more about this than I do. So what's the latest on the tariff situation?
Yes, thank you for having me. Lance Thrakill, the CEO and third-generation owner of All Metals Fabricating. We're in Allen, Texas, and we are a contract manufacturer. We do sheet metal fabricating and machining, powder coating, and electromechanical assembly for alternative energy, data centers, telecom, and medical spaces predominantly. Also do some aerospace. But
wait, first off, perfect. Lance gets 3 points for a good intro there. Right? All right, Garrett's on that one. Because now I got all kinds of questions before you even get into the tariff stuff. But go ahead, your reaction to the tariff news.
Yeah, we'd already experienced it. So the Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, when he first tweeted about that these were going to go in place, we came into work Monday, and aluminum prices had skyrocketed almost 40%. Copper went up 60%. Steel was a little bit of a lagger. But it's now up over 30% as well. So that the mills get in front of this. So do the distributors. They want to make sure, and anytime they hear anything, they're going to jump on raising their costs. So or their prices rather, not their cost. So yeah, we've already been experiencing it for a couple weeks.
So where do you usually get your aluminum from?
So, yeah, we buy all of our aluminum from American distributors, which get aluminum from all over the world. We do not get much from China. And just for the record, I'm pro-tariff on China. Yes, I'm not a fan of slave labor and subsidized goods and us trying to compete with them. But nonetheless, most actually aluminum comes from Canada. So for the U.S. and really, I think the frustrating or troubling part, I would say, is there's no possible way for the American mills to even produce a fraction of the need for U.S. manufacturers. And standing up these mills costs hundreds of millions of dollars and takes years and years to do. I think in his last administration we built 3 or 4 mills, maybe steel mills. And so, still that won't even make a dent in what's needed here in America. So U.S. manufacturers are wholly dependent on imported goods, imported metal. A lot of it comes from Eastern Europe, the steel and the stainless particularly. But most aluminum comes from Canada and China.
All right. So do you guys already have the price effect hit you a month ago?
Whenever the Super Bowl was, I think it was
6 weeks ago. Yeah.
Was it really? Yeah. So yeah, it was that Monday.
No, I guess it was just like 3 weeks ago. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 3 weeks. Yeah, it was later this year, remember? So I got that extra weekend. So in the season now. But
so have y'all had to change anything since then?
Oh, yeah, it was funny. I had just been negotiating with Ericsson, one of our biggest customers. They supply, telecom solutions.
The phone people?
Well, it used to be back in the 90s. We all had the Ericsson flip phone.
I think I did have an Ericsson flip phone. Yeah. What are they doing now?
They do. They provide the telecom infrastructure for AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. So basically, them and a couple of their competitors are who provide the radios, which is what allows us to have this cell phone signal, which I'm called in on right now. And Ericsson and their competitors, along with partnerships like ours and others, come up with solutions to mount these radios. Especially with 5G, you have to have them, strung all throughout the city because the wavelength is smaller. So there has to be more radios deployed. And so we make the solution to hang them. And, you see a cell tower, there's shrouds on the side of it. We make those. And all sorts of different bracketry and such. But anyways, I've been negotiating with them they were like, hey, AT&T needs year-long pricing on this. And I was like, okay, well, I'll throw a 10%, qualifier in there that if aluminum, I'll look at the index, say what it is right now. And if it goes up 10%, this is on Friday, like the Friday before the Super Bowl, and gave them year-long pricing. Well, it was no longer good on Monday. Ultimately it's the volatility that causes us challenges. as contract manufacturers because we want stability and repeat. We're building repeat parts over and over again, and so we're used to the metal market being relatively flat and not having to adjust our price every build. We're building 300 to 500 different jobs for different customers a month, and when we're having to requote that all the time, that's quite a bit more work.
So how much of what you make actually gets sold overseas? Do y'all have to worry about tariffs affecting you on the way out like that?
Sure. We do a little bit overseas. Some of Ericsson does deploy some of our stuff to overseas. We have had some business in the UK and Italy a little bit, but not much, not enough to really affect us. No, sir.
All right. So what else have y'all had to change just in the last month or two of Donald Trump?
Not much. I mean, it's really just been that. I mean, and let me just kind of explain how it works. So what happens is, they say, okay, we're going to give a tariff on these international mills. Well, the mills are saying, yeah, that's great. We're not paying that. So, and by the way, we got a 25% more cost. Well, we're not going to reduce our margins. So now it's 28, 30%, whatever. Then it goes to the U.S. distributors. They're not reducing their margins. And so now it's 30, 35%, meanwhile, all your customers are hearing 25%. So it ends up rolling downhill to the manufacturers who get squeezed on their margins by the end customer. And so, some of that, ultimately we pass on as much as we can and customers understand. But at the end of the day, it's creating a more competitive landscape where you're having to, bid up against other people again, and stuff that was just like, blow and go production is now getting revisited, and, people are beating you up on price because they don't want to pay the surplus. So and you can't help but think at a macro level that does impact inflation. That was my concern with, the tariffs in the first run of their administration. Selfishly as it applies to our business, but then also just at a macro level of, hey, if the costs are going up, then how can that not cause inflation?
Well, interesting stuff. I love watching how it's made. They have a lot of fabricating shops and assembly lines and stuff like that. But I bet y'all got some really cool equipment in the back.
Yes, sir. We've been focused on automation since really we started heavily invested in 2016. We've invested an average of $800,000 a year in new equipment, and automation. So half of our departments can run lights out unattended. We've been identified as an industry leader for utilizing automation and AI and all sorts of different aspects. Data analytics. It's called Industry 4.0 is kind of the buzzword in the manufacturing world to describe what all we've been implementing. And so it's fun. People think of manufacturing as like a dark, dirty workspace, and it's actually one of the coolest, spaces for, young people to get into, because you're getting to work with some of the coolest equipment in the world and make really cool things.
Yeah, and I noticed so many factories these days are climate controlled, which I think makes all the difference in the world. Do y'all have one of those laser cutters? Could you cut me out a big James Show sign if I sent you the
totally,
right?
Man.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
We got a laser that can cut through 1.5-inch stainless steel and 1.5-inch aluminum. I don't think your sign needs to be that thick, but
good Lord, no.
It's a bad boy.
Well, I'll call you next time I'm building a tank. This is Lance Thrailkill from All Metals Fabricating. You said in Allen?
Yes, sir. In Allen, Texas, just north of Dallas.
All right. Thank you very much for your expertise. Fun stuff. All right. You just heard from a metals fabricating shop. My favorite part of the speech was him mentioning just the attempt, at least the lip service to the idea of a balanced budget. I mean, how profound is that? Also, the mechanism by which he hopes to get there. $5 million gold cards. Thought that was pretty cool. There was a lot of emotional stuff that was happening with the people that were invited. The mom and Jocelyn Nungery, the little 13-year-old boy who, if y'all don't know the backstory of JD Daniels, the 13-year-old, he didn't just have brain cancer, and so now we're making him an honorary Secret Service agent. He had brain cancer, and then while he was in the hospital, he befriended another, he's had it since he was 6. And he'd always wanted to be a cop since he was 5 when his family got rescued in Hurricane Harvey. He's from Houston. And, the cops that rescued him left such an imprint on him that he's like, well, I'd like to be the good guy when I grow up. So then he gets brain cancer, meets a friend in the hospital who was made an honorary police officer, and then she died of cancer. And so then he was like, well, heck, I love cops, and in her honor, I'm going to go be made an honorary policeman too. And it's something like 400 or something precincts and outfits have given him some sort of honorary status at this point. And then last year, there was a viral video that went around where this little kid, 12 years old, dressed up in a full cop's uniform, goes out into the community and they start mocking him. There's people in his own community. These ladies start twerking on him and making fun of him and laughing at him and ridiculing him. And it was ridiculous because you have like a 12-year-old who wants to be a cop. He aspires to be one of the helpers in the world, and he was getting mocked for it. That's how much cops are disrespected in some communities here in 2025. And that's not a political thing. I don't even know where that comes from. So that's sort of the backstory, in that not only is he fighting brain cancer, not only does he want to be a cop, he was actually mocked for it. And that's how he came to what little public presence he had. The other part that a lot of people are going to remember for about 48 hours and then never think of again is all the people that walked out. All the people that said, oh, I can't stand being in there anymore. I mean, this is a nightmare scenario. Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman for where I'm sitting right now, had to walk out.
This is not what we should be doing. I don't even know why we fighting with Greenland. Why we fighting with Greenland? We fighting with Canada. We fighting with Mexico. Yet we in love with Putin. What is happening? Like, this is not America. This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me and wake me the up, because I'm ready to get on with it.
I'm starting to like her potty mouth. A lot of people that turns off. No, I like it. Another person who had to walk out, Pramila Jayapal. She's another congresswoman in the squad. She had to walk out because it was so racist, y'all. You know it.
I just walked out of Trump's address, joint address to Congress. I went there because I was insistent that I wanted to hear directly from him what he had to say. But after hearing him spew lie after lie after lie, racism and xenophobia at the center of everything, I walked out. Racism. And I'm going to insist that we stand up for our constituents, for the American people across this country, and fight back so that we can make sure we're delivering for working people everywhere.
Yeah, all racism and xenophobia. Like when you give a 13-year-old cancer surviving little boy who happens to be black the honorary Secret Service title. Was that racist? Jocelyn Nungary's mom. Let's see. Does that count as racism when you're remembering the brutal rape and death of a 12-year-old non-white girl? What about the Border Patrol agent that was being honored there? Obviously, not quite of the pale persuasion either. Whatever it is, doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what it's going to be called racist anyway. So just go out and live your life and be a good person and ignore these goobers. Roberto in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on Trump's speech last night?
Trump's speech last night, what you got to look at is from the perspective of the other presidents that have come before him. That it showed how far ahead of schedule, so to speak, relative to these lackluster Democratic non-thought process people. He showed you also the malcontent that Democrats have for all people, regardless of race, the female persuasion, so to speak. None of these Democrats stood up whatsoever to acknowledge anything that Trump said. And again, it's because they hate him so much. That just shows how much they hate the opposite side. So Democrats are never going to win another election, thank God, because of what they're in right now, and they just can't get themselves out of it.
Well, from my perspective, the true believers don't actually hate Trump. I don't know if you've ever been to D.C. I went a couple times. Like when I was working for Sirius, the guy that was on after us was doing some speech with Tom DeLay at like Georgetown. So we got a trip there, and it was for work. But you go hang out on Pennsylvania Avenue, is like runs diagonally and kind of connects the Capitol to the White House. There's a bunch of bars and cigar bars and hangouts that when you go in there, Democrats and Republicans are best friends. The ones that are in the system at the top, they're all hanging out. They're not slap fighting. They're not arguing. They're sharing tabs. Their staffers all know each other. They all know each other, especially the guys that have been there a while. So I don't think even most of the people that were in that chamber hate Donald Trump. The point is to whip out the people in the hinterlands in their fervor, in their just foaming at the mouth against Trump. They go out and they say things to make their electorate hate Trump. But I don't think most of them really hate him. That's just what they're projecting. Do they really think he's a Nazi? Do you think that AOC really thinks Trump's a Nazi, Roberto?
I do. I think regardless of what people say, there's been way too much bottom line lying about everything for the past, 4 to 10 years from the government. You see it every single day. You hear it every single day. I don't believe a damn thing that they say whatsoever.
All right. Well, there's Roberto in Fort Worth. Great call. Appreciate it, sir. 800-288-9227. Well, he doesn't get any points because he disagreed with me. Just playing. That's a great call either way. Do you like steak? If you answer no, get off my show. Just turn the channel right now. You're banned from the show. I'm just kidding. I like steak. However, when the lieutenant governor of the great state of Texas, Dan Patrick, says he wants to change the New York strip to a Texas strip, I don't know. I'm as pro-Texas and pro-steak as they come. That sounds a little cringy to me. Scott Baradell from Idea Grove's coming back on the James Show. Is that the proper marketing term that you guys would use over at Idea Grove? Cringe?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cringeworthy.
Well, it feels like he's copying because Donald Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And, hey, that was so popular and so cool. What can we rename here? And it's like, you know what? I don't really have a beef with New York. No pun intended. See what I did there? Because beef and the pun.
Yeah, I got it. Well, there's no shortage. There's no shortage of Trump wannabe politicians out there. I think one of the things people like about Trump is, if nothing else, he's an original. But then when you're just copying what he does, not quite the same effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that Dan Bongino has pointed out, he comes on the show before me here, and he's a former Secret Service agent. And whenever there is something in the news, like when Donald Trump goes to Daytona and he does the lap around the track in the Beast, Bongino always points out that it's not called the Beast. No one calls it the Beast. No one in the Secret Service calls it the Beast. People that make it don't call it the Beast. It's just some reporter made that up one day and everyone else copied it. So it's weird. Some things that you want to catch on will never catch on. And then a lot of it just accidentally catches on.
Well, yeah, like in the steak, for example, New York strip, the Delmonico's is a New York restaurant that came up with this, famous for it. That restaurant's been around since 1837. So it's been called New York Strip for a long time. It's like the Gulf of Mexico has been called the Gulf of Mexico since the 1500s. So this is kind of a big deal to just say, hey, you know what? I'll call it something else.
So let's talk about how some rebrandings actually work. Well, I remember when Datsun changed its name to Nissan, we all just accepted that, and within 2 years, it was the most normal thing in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I think it has to do with the product sometimes. Like, for example, one that I don't think worked that well was when FedEx years ago bought Kinko's, because Kinko's was so different from what FedEx was, and so many college students staying up all night at copier centers, had such a deep association with the Kinko's brand that calling it FedEx Office just never seemed to work. So I think sometimes that there's different reasons why some brands can make the switch and some can't.
I still hear people call it Kinko's. I think I've even referred to it as Kinko's in the last year or so.
Well, we all know a more recent example is who calls XX. Everyone calls it Twitter. Man,
that's a great example. That is because X can mean 1,000 things. X is so overused. You have X in algebra. You have Professor X with the X-Men, and you just Chemical X with the Powerpuff Girls. I mean, it's so overused that Twitter was its own thing, and Twitter wasn't reused elsewhere. So it'll be interesting to see if that one ever sticks, Scott.
Well, I mean, Google X and see what comes up. I mean, X is associated with a lot of things that might get you in trouble with the office as well.
Well, not the triple X stuff, not the Malcolm X stuff so much, but yeah, all good points. What are you doing over at Idea Grove these days, Scott?
We're keeping pretty busy. We're not doing any major rebrands of steak or other food items, but there's plenty of other stuff to do. Business is going well.
What do you think about this Casey Anthony rebrand? Did you see that she's trying to insert herself into the public sphere again? She's a legal advocate now.
Oh my, yeah, I saw it. I don't know. I was one of those people who followed very carefully the case when it happened, and the Nancy Grace, that was her big era. Was
Tot Mom
televising every moment of that, but I think it was horrific. So I just don't like seeing her face, to be honest.
Well, for those of you who aren't familiar, the lady who probably, we all assume, reportedly, although found innocent in a court of law, killed her 2-year-old daughter. She's now reintroduced herself as a legal advocate on TikTok, and she has a newsletter too if you want to sign up for it, Scott.
Yeah, well, that was back in 2008, so I guess that's a long time ago for a lot of people. But gosh, I still remember it pretty vividly, don't you?
You want to feel old today, Scott? Guess how old Casey Anthony is right now?
Tell me.
38. Yeah. She was just like a little college party girl when they found her poor toddler, and now she's, oh man, getting gray hair and all that good stuff. All right, Scott Baradell, thank you very much. How do we find your work outside of WBAP?
Well, our agency is Idea Grove, which is ideagrove.com.
There was a kid, DJ Daniel. When he was 5, he was saved by a policeman. His family was saved by a policeman in Hurricane Harvey. So from then on, he wanted to be a policeman. He got cancer when he was a kid and had to go through 5-something years of surgeries and treatments and all kinds of horrible stuff. A girl he befriended in the hospital became an honorary cop, which he thought was cool because he always wanted to be a cop. And then she passed away. And so in her honor, he's been made honorary cop at all these other police agencies to help, raise awareness or whatever for childhood cancers. And then he got in the public sphere a little bit more besides his activism, being 12 years old at the time. He was in a viral video being mocked for being in his cop uniform. It's a cute little 12-year-old kid. And it's at night, and he's dressed as a cop, and he's got the plastic gun on, and he's got the badge and the patches, and his shirt's tucked in. He looks great, but these people are making fun of him for being a cop. Cops are not looked upon highly in some communities. And so he was being bullied by adults. They're laughing at him and pointing at him and making fun at him and twerking on him and dancing on him. You're going to arrest me and all this stuff. Making fun of a kid for wanting to be a cop.
Oh, baby, you can't arrest me. You too cocky. So you on your phone? You about to go? What? Jail? Bitch ass back for real. Sir.
All right, so it was a terrible video, and Trump honored him last night by making an honorary Secret Service agent.
And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
So then you see a kid who's now 13. His dad picks him up, and it's an emotional moment. I mean, he was rescued from a natural disaster. He had childhood cancer. His close friend died. He was ridiculed, and it was passed around in a viral video, and now he's standing in the halls of Congress, and the most powerful man on planet Earth is giving him an honor that he's dreamed about. And it's a really touching moment. I mean, it's hard to not get emotionally pulled in that direction when you see something like that, but Nicole Wallace, MSNBC, after the speech, they're doing some coverage. And I know they just have to say something to fill the time, but she probably could have said anything but this. She saw that. I mean, what an amazing story. What a heartwarming story. What a beautiful moment to see the dad holding this kid, and the dad's kind of crying, the kid's kind of crying. He didn't know it was going to happen. This was all a surprise. Nicole Wallace just takes probably the worst angle possible.
I think this was a lesson in finding one thing that you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ, and I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
All right, these people are just miserable. These people are they're abused animals at this point. They act like they have some sort of weird PTSD, and it's self-inflicted. No one's really been harassing them or tormenting them or torturing them or beating them up or... you have these people who do these viral videos where they're like, congratulations, I'm afraid to go into the street now that Trump is president. Well, that's all of your own doing. There's not roving bands of MAGA hats out there beating the snot out of people who don't match up to some xenophobic standard. This is all in your head. We're not really racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, Nazis who want to genocide anybody, Palestinians or trans people or gay people. Or that's not what we're here for. We want to cut government. You can make up all these other fantasy things about why we are doing what we're doing. But if you're going to be scared to just go out and see a kid get honored... Oh, I hope he doesn't commit suicide. I hope he didn't get beat up by Trump supporters. I hope he doesn't have to defend the MAGA people storming the Capitol. Oh, stop it. Stop it. You people have just made yourself so miserable. You're even ruining a heart-touching moment like that. Scott Jennings. If I could trade jobs with one person on the planet, it wouldn't be Donald Trump. It would be Scott Jennings. Because not only does he get to say what I say, he gets to say it at a table full of people who all disagree with him on a network where the majority of people disagree with him. And that's just got to add a little extra special sauce to the fun that he was already having last night after the speech.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure she's a very nice person. None of this will be remembered because this was a horrific night for the opposition party, regardless of how well she just spoke. It started out with Al Green getting thrown off the House floor because he couldn't keep his emotions under control. Then they had the ridiculous paddles, which now social media is roasting.
That you said false on one side. And
ridiculous.
Elon on
and
the
then
other.
finally, and maybe most terribly, the Democrats who couldn't find it in their heart to stand for objectively good things, including the 95-year-old mother of Mark Fogel and Mark, who got rescued from a Russian prison, and they couldn't even stand up for that. I thought Democrats came into this speech lost and defeated by Donald Trump, and today it looks to me like they're even more lost and even more defeated than when this speech started.
I mean, let's give him a round of applause, but how easy is this job? This may be an easier job than Doge has. You realize how easy Doge's job is? How about we find some waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government? Oh my God, is there an easier job? That's like going to the mall. Hey, can you find anyone that's overweight in the mall on the bad side of town? I don't know. We may never solve this mystery.